What is up, Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Make sure you're the first to get the Giants content as soon as it drops. Check me out over on Twitter at TommyG105. Please check out the Giants Country team, articles, pods, interviews, you name it. Giants content all the time. Top level, top shelf stuff. And listen, usually this show, the midweek show, we go over the opponent, matchups, who to watch, predictions, what to look for. This week's show, we're going to do all that, but we're going to start off with a little bit of news that happened. Kadarius Toney has been traded. Finally, the Kadarius Toney saga has come to an end. Giants shipped the speedy receiver to Kansas City for a 2023 third-round pick and a sixth-round pick. The third-round pick is a comp pick. The third-rounder is not conditional. The trade became official pretty much today. So that's big news for this Giants team. Toney has been kind of an enigma his whole time in New York. He has 41 receptions for 420 yards. And if you think about it, 189 of those yards came versus Dallas in one game. So Kadarius Toney has not played. There's been issues behind the scenes. He's constantly fighting with beat reporters, fighting with Giants content creators, you name it. He has rabbit ears, seems to have been more focused on the off-the-field stuff than the on-the-field stuff. Even puts out a tweet after the trade. Essentially, I'll break it down along the lines of, I was never really injured. I don't got to tell anybody nothing. Then he deleted it. Either way, it's difficult because this Giants team is devoid of playmakers, especially at the wide receiver position. A lot of Giants fans were holding their breath, hoping Toney would come back, and he's not. He's gone. You get a third rounder, you get a sixth rounder, which is great. Obviously, the long-term plan for Joe Schoen and company is still in effect here. But it's an interesting scenario because the New York Giants are 6-1, and it's a wide-open NFC, and you trade, which would have probably been your best wide receiver once he came back healthy. So it leads me to believe that this is going to be a domino effect. There's going to be another move or two coming here soon. Giants freed up $1.2 million in cap space by trading Kadarius Toney. And listen, at the end of the day, if he turns out to be a great receiver, props to him, props to Kansas City for making the trade. But something was not right here with Kadarius Toney from day one. From the first day of rookie minicamp, he had an issue with his cleats. He couldn't practice. Ever since then, there's always been something, whether it's personal days, whether it's issues in the media. He's not playing. We don't know why he's not playing. We're not going to say why he's not playing. I feel like Joe Judge coddled a lot of these players, including Kadarius Toney, and fostered this culture of, this kid who is immense talent, essentially threw it away with the New York Giants. Now, he could rejuvenate with Kansas City, but the team that drafted him, the team that believed in him, took him in the first round after trading back, missing on Slater, missing on Parsons, and his career is over as a New York Giant. So that's something to be said. His best game with the Giants, like I said, was the Dallas game, ended in him throwing a punch. Just a really uneventful time for Kadarius Toney. Kansas City's a good look for Toney. They obviously run a specific offense that can cater to him. He's very Tyreek Hill-like, slot position. You could use him out of the backfield. All the stuff the Giants didn't get to see with Toney. So, and listen, while Brian Daboll had too few chances to unlock Toney's potential, Joe Schoen makes a clear move here. And to me, this trade was not because of injuries. This wasn't because he wasn't the right scheme fit. I'm sure all that played into it. This was he wasn't the right fit for the team. I think a lot has to do with him being immature, not being able to handle the New York media. I'm sure he's not a bad kid. It's not about him being a bad kid or a bad person. Just when that spotlight shines bright in New York and you're constantly injured and you're in the news and everybody's attacking you, I mean, he's DMing Giants content creators and, talking smack to them, just stuff that you don't want this kid to do, and especially when he's not playing. So that's it. Giants end up with a third and a sixth round pick from Kansas City. Kansas City will see if they can unlock what is Kadarius Toney. Wish him well. Really was a shocker to see the trade, but then again, it wasn't. There's been 3 instances so far in the last year or so where there's been trade rumors, including when Joe Schoen took over. I believe it was about a month and a half into the job where, he told a beat reporter, we're not trading Kadarius Toney. Now, if that rumor was true back then, makes you wonder what could have been going on behind the scenes with Kadarius Toney before Joe Shane got there that he wanted to trade him a month and a half into his tenure. So, but that's it. It's over. The Kadarius Toney saga is finished. His career as a Giant is no more. The Giants will now look to try to find some receivers. Will they trade? Will they try to get a DJ Moore? DJ Moore can fit under the salary cap. He's going to be paid about $600,000 for the rest of the year. Obviously, we'll need top draft capital to trade for him, and he's making a heavy, heavy sum the next couple of years. Or do they go for something a little bit mid-scale with a Jerry Jeudy? We'll see. But Giants definitely need wide receiver help. I don't believe it's going to come from Kenny Golladay anytime soon. I know he made some comments saying he can't wait to get back. It's first time being on a team that's winning like this, and he's excited to get back. I wouldn't count on it. If he does get back, more the merrier. But right now you're looking at a tough situation where you don't have wide receivers. So Toney's gone. Giants move forward. On to the matchup. Seattle Seahawks. The 6-1 Giants fly over to the Northwest to take on Geno Smith and the Seahawks. New York and Seattle, two of the surprise franchises this season in the NFL. Giants come into the game again. Familiar territory, underdog, 3-point underdog, a position they're used to. Giants have been underdogs in 5 of their 7 games so far this season. They've already tied the NFL record for most wins as an underdog in only 7 games. So really remarkable when you think about it. This team has just embraced the underdog mentality. They come in and they're like, cool. I know fans on Twitter, as soon as they see those predictions and everybody's predicting the opposing team, they love it. And it's exciting because the Giants have shown when they're the underdog, they can go in and win. They can go into play Tennessee on the road opening day and pull out a victory. So Giants have embraced that role. I'm sure it's talked about a lot behind the scenes by the coaching staff. Hey, we're the underdogs. Let's see what we could take this. And they've taken it pretty far. So, and they come in riding high, 6-1, another come from behind victory over Jacksonville. And it was more of the same for the New York Giants. They get stronger as the game goes along. The rushing game gets stronger as the game goes along. The defense, which looks overmatched for most parts of the game, always seems to make that play. Always seems to get a fumble in the red zone, a sack, an interception. Happened versus Jacksonville. Travis Etienne, I know I pronounced his name wrong in the last episode. Sorry, Travis. Travis Etienne is running all over the Giants, heading towards the end zone, and Xavier McKinney punches that ball out. Really was the difference in that game if you want to break it down. So the defense has been bend but don't break. Quarterback and Daniel Jones has been progressing every single game. You got to give Daniel Jones credit. He's cut down on the turnovers. He has 1 interception this season in 7 games that was his fault. He has 2, but 1 came against Dallas. Sills falls down, whatever. Hasn't been fumbling the ball, and he's been running it a ton. We're going to get into Daniel Jones' rushing attack. He's been running a ton and holding on to the ball. Hopefully I didn't jinx it. So, when the Giants look at it and they come into a game and the opponent's looking at the Giants, what do they look at? Giants are a second-half football team, and that's scary. When you're an opponent and you give your best shot in the first half and you're only up 3 or the game is tied and the team across from you is a second-half team, that's a scary proposition. And especially in the fourth quarter, Giants have and it's funny because the Giants were 3-58 the last 5 seasons when trailing in the fourth quarter. 3 wins, 58 losses when trailing in the fourth quarter. And they already have 5 come from behind wins in the fourth quarter. Really, really remarkable. It's unbelievable. They've outscored opponents 58-22 in the fourth quarter. I mean, think about that. They're almost tripling up their opponents in the fourth quarter. And that's what this team is. Hungry, physical, gets stronger as the game goes along, powerful rushing attack, dual-headed rushing attack with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. Really doesn't get much better as far as rushing attacks go. And you know what's even more remarkable about this Giants team? That when you really look at these first 7 games, is that they've done it with injuries. And I'm not talking about one critical injury or a bunch of small ones. It has been spread out. And I'm going to read you this list really quick of the Giants' injuries. Who they're playing without going into Seattle, okay? You're missing Sterling Shepard, torn ACL. Darian Beavers, torn ACL. Colin Johnson, I believe his was Achilles. Marcus McKeithen, torn ACL. Cordero Flott He has, I believe, a quad. Kenny Galladay, O'Shane Zimenez, Daniel Bellinger, Evan Neal, and I probably could name a few more. And his Giants team is 6-1 with all those injuries, multiple clustered injuries at position groups. And it's unbelievable, and it's really astonishing. It's a true testament to the coaching staff and the players. They personified the next man up mentality. They have each other's back. It doesn't matter who goes down. You've seen it in the Jacksonville game. You lost Evan Neal, Daniel Bellinger, Ben Bredesen. Really tough losses for the New York Giants. And what happens? Next guy comes in, and it's just next man up. What's the next play? Run the play. Let's go. Beat the guy in front of you. And it's really remarkable to see because the Giants have struggled with injuries for many, many years. And a lot of fans have poked at that as the excuse for why they've struggled, a portion of it. And this shows you when you have good coaching, when you have a successful system, when the GM can pick up players off the street for said system and it works, that's how you win football games. So, really remarkable. Again, kudos to the coaching staff. They have the Giants playing at a really high level with a ton of injuries. Okay, now time for the Seahawks. Surprise team, right? They come in 4-3, riding high off a win. They actually have won 2 in a row now. Geno Smith, of all people, Geno Smith, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 107 QB rating. This was a Geno Smith that replaced Eli Manning for one game, and you know the story. But he has been playing well. He's been making all the plays. They have a pretty dangerous passing attack that the Giants need to be careful. But really what the Seattle team does is pass the ball successfully. They're top 10 in almost every category, and they could run the ball. I mean, when you look at this Seattle team from different angles and you say, okay, passing-wise, they have DK Metcalf, who might not play. He hurt his knee last weekend. They have TJ Lockett. They have Godwin. But then you look at the rushing attack, and it's really been unbelievable. They have their rookie Kenneth Walker, who's been steamrolling. He had over 160 yards last week. It's been unbelievable. Like I said, DK might miss the game. That's something to look into. Hasn't been super productive this year, even though he has for over 400 yards, double what any Giants receiver has so far. And the Seahawks running game is just done damage. They're rushing for 5.5 yards per carry. That is number 1 in the NFL. And this is the scary part of this matchup. Seahawks are number 1 in the NFL in yards per carry rushing, and this Giants defense has been a disaster on the ground. You could not let Kenneth Walker come into this game and run all over you like Travis Etienne did, like Pollard did, like you can name pretty much every running back the Giants have faced. Can't have it. But the ground game, like I said, is led by Kenneth Walker, 411 yards. The receiving core is solid. Lockett has 418 yards. Lockett has 468 yards. DK 418 yards. They got a good combo. The defense is led by Jordan Brooks, Quentin Jefferson, and Tariq Woolen. Tariq Woolen has 4 interceptions already. That's something that the Giants need to be careful of. I know Jones has been playing mistake-free football, which is great, but Woolen has showed propensity to intercept passes. And you're going into a tough environment. When you go into playing to Seattle, that 12th man there is real. You're in Seattle. You have the thin air. You have the crowd going insane. It's hard to get the offensive line set. It's hard to get the communications out. This is going to be a real test for Daniel Jones. I know Seattle's only 4-3, but this is going to be a real test. And you could say that probably about any NFL game that you talk about, but this is it. This is going to be a real test for him. And every week is a new test for Daniel Jones. Seahawks defense, not as good as their offense. They've given up the 7th most passing yards and the 3rd most rushing yards. Seahawks are giving up 4.9 yards per carry. That's something to note. We'll get back to that a little bit later in the show. Seattle has beaten Denver, Detroit, Arizona, and San Diego with losses to San Fran, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Up and down team. They had some big wins. They've had some tough losses. Kind of hard to get a real barometer on where they're at. I think this game will be big for Seattle. If they could take down a 6-1 Giants team, I think that'll kind of put that notch in their hat. They are consistent. They are going to be a good team. But so far, you really don't know. Really good offense, not so good defense, some good wins, some bad losses. So kind of puts them to me in that mediocre range, slightly above mediocre. And like I said, this game is going to be important. If they can knock off a 6-1 Giants team, that's going to say a lot. So let's get into the injury report. We always do the injury report. Gets a little bit tiring when it comes to Giants injuries, but we do have some good news this week. Yes, good news with Giants injuries. Returning this week are Ellerson Smith, returning to practice at least. We'll see how it goes for the game. Ellerson Smith, Rodarius Williams, Matt Pert, and Nick Gates. And I'm going to stop the show for a second. I want to talk about Nick Gates here. So Nick Gates, last year versus Washington, almost lost his darn leg. Had, I believe it was, I'm not going to put a number on it, a ton of surgeries on that leg, almost lost the leg. Kept reassuring the fan base, his family, obviously, that he was going to come back. He was going to play football. A lot of us said, hey, worry about your health. Worry about your personal life. That's number one. Football is last on the list. But Nick Gates is back practicing. And that says a lot, not only about Nick Gates and his character as an individual, as a professional football player. That means a lot to this team. And whether he comes in and starts or, they get him going slowly, Nick Gates, if you remember, is one of the go-getters, one of the guys, we'll call it. When there is issues on the field that need to be taken care of, when they're beating up on Danny, when they shouldn't be, the defense, Nick Gates is in there. We've seen the fight he had with Aaron Donald. Not a lot of people will step to Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive tackles in the game. Nick Gates is that guy, and he is kind of one of those equalizers on the offensive line. Now, do you play him at guard? Do you play him at center? Where do you switch him? Do you leave Feliciano at center and put Nick Gates at guard? Or do you let Azudu keep playing at guard and put Gates at center and then see what happens with Feliciano? A lot of the moves you can make there, but listen, it's a positive. And when it comes to the New York Giants and injuries, you'll take your positives. And shout out to Nick Gates. That's awesome. Shout out to you, brother, coming back from a serious injury. Giants fans absolutely wish you the best. You have Rodarius Williams, cornerback. Again, young kid, hasn't played much. We'll see where he fits into the mix in the secondary. Obviously, Darnay has struggled. Giants still waiting for Cordero Flott to get back. Still waiting for Aaron Robinson to come back if that happens. You have right tackle Matt Pert coming back from a torn ACL last year. Project tackle, taken in the draft, never really settled in. Big kid, strong kid. Kind of talks about maybe he doesn't have the toughness for the position, not the aggressiveness that you need, but we'll see. Maybe the time off did him well. And you have Ellerson Smith, pass rusher, another young player. See where he fits into that pass rush mix. Giants have had some trouble with pass rushing, and they've been missing pass rushers. Thibodeau missed a few games to start the season. Aziz has, I think, played one game this year. Zimenez is out again. So maybe Ellerson Smith gets himself a little rotational role as a pass rusher. Evan Neal, looking like probably 3 to 4 weeks, MCL injury. Daniel Bellinger, really tough injury. Really hate to see that. This kid was settling into this Giants offense perfectly, blocking, catching passes. Really excited for his future, but on a freak accident where the linebacker goes to tackle him and somehow gets his whole fist inside his face mask and breaks his orbital bone. So Bellinger's out indefinitely. There hasn't been a word for if it's for a few games this season. You have to think minimum is going to be 4 or 5 games. That's a tough injury to have. Prayers up to Bellinger. Hopefully he gets better soon. You have Kenny Golladay still out with the knee. Cordero Flott still out with the calf. And Zimenez out with the quad. For Seattle, you have DK, who is probably not going to play, hasn't practiced all week. They said they're going to take it really easy with him with the knee. That'll be big for the Giants. Like I said, Tyler Lockett was limited. I think he will play. Gabe Jackson limited. I didn't really see any other significant injuries for Seattle to talk about. Giants usually win or lose, however you want to look at the injury battles. So that's where the injuries are at for both sides. Now we're going to get into matchups. And the first matchup I want to get into, and this seems like the most important matchup every single game for the G-Men, the New York Giants front seven versus Seahawks rushing attack. And this game is looking like it's going to be running of the bulls because you have two teams that can run the ball very well and two teams that cannot stop the run at all. But Giants have been the worst of the two. When you think about it, Giants have given up third most rushing yards 1,011 yards, and the Giants are dead last in yards per carry. Giants are giving up 5.7 yards per carry rushing. That is brutal. Tied for last, if that means anything. But that's brutal. And you're going against a team in Seattle that can run the ball. They have the most yards per carry in the NFL. So you have the team with the most yards per carry rushing, 5.5 in Seattle, versus the team that gives up the most yards per carry in the Giants at 5.7. So it's the the age-old adage of who breaks, right? Unblockable object, immovable force. I don't know if I messed that up, but you get my drift. Who breaks here, right? And how do the Giants stop the run? This is something that bears watching because the Giants are 6-1, all close games, all fourth quarter comebacks. And the reason why they've been close games is because they can't stop the run. And it was brutal last week against ETN. Going back and looking at that film, Tay Crowder, Jalen Smith, really tough games, missed assignments, wrong holes, undercutting blocks instead of taking blockers. There was a lot on tape for both linebackers that wasn't good. Wasn't good film, and it's pretty much been that way the entire season, unfortunately. But they got to nip it in the bud. They got to stop the running because when you get into December, January, cold weather, I know this is a passing league, but if you can't stop the run, you won't even have a chance to stop the pass in this league. They're going to run it down your throat. And the worst part about this Giants rushing defense is they get ran on right up the middle, and they can get ran on the outsides too. So, Zimenez is hurt. Aziz is hurt on the edges. Jalen Smith is struggling. Tay Crowder's struggling. Do you see a little bit more Landon Collins this game? Can he get downhill and chase the ball carrier? He's a converted safety. He should be able to move well in space against the run. Micah McFadden, does he get back in the mix? He was starting in the beginning of the year, did not play well, struggled. They pulled him. Do you give him some time, right? Giants have struggled against pre-snap motion when it comes to the running game. So, clearly, through 7 games, the Achilles heel of this Giants team is the rush defense. The linebacking core, namely, really, really have struggled. And listen, the running game is not something that you could scheme to stop necessarily. It's not something you could cross your fingers and hope maybe the opponent won't run it on us. When an opponent knows you can't stop the run, that's the easiest route from point A to point B for the opponent. So if you can't stop the run, you're going to get reminded every single week that you can't stop the run. So anxious to see how the Giants do it, see what Wink Martindale can pull out this week. Going to be very important because Seattle can pass the ball too. So if you're giving them up the rushing lanes, Geno Smith is going to tear you up. And I never thought I'd say that, but it's true. All right, second matchup, and this is why I said running of the Bulls. Seattle's front seven versus the dual threat of the New York Football Giants. Number 26, Saquon Barkley, and number 8, Daniel Jones. How does Seattle stop, right? Seattle struggled against the run, 4.9 yards per carry, like I said. They've given up 1,048 yards against the run, Seattle. That's 31st in the NFL, so they're right there with the Giants. Difference is Seattle's given up 10 rushing touchdowns, so they've let a few pop on defense. So something the Giants need to look at. Barkley, of course, a man on a mission, 726 yards. He's only 14 yards away from Nick Chubb, who is the NFL leading rusher. You have also, before I go on, Barkley has 8 20-plus yard runs. That's number 1 in the league. He also has he has 8 20-yard runs. That's second in the league. He's number 1 in 40-plus yard runs with 2, tied. So that's Saquon Barkley. I'm not gonna say the straw again because I've said that a lot of times. He makes this team go. He's like the measuring stick when you're watching a Giants game. How's Barkley doing, right? He struggled in some first halves and he gets going in the second half. To me, that's the biggest difference between Barkley in 2022 and 21-20 outside of the injuries. And credit to the coaching staff. They do not abandon the run. If the run is not working in the first half, they keep at it. So credit to the coaching staff, credit to Saquon Barkley, and credit to Daniel Stephen Jones III. 343 yards rushing this season, 2 runs of 20 yards or more. He's averaging almost 50 yards per carry per game. And when you're a defense and you're pinning your ears back to stop the run, and not only do you have Saquon Barkley, you have a quarterback that could take off at any time. You have a quarterback that can outrun defenders, a quarterback that has learned to take care of the football, which is critical in this equation. So it's going to be tough for Seattle. It's not going to be easy to stop these two. And I think this game will be decided on who could stop the other's rushing attack more efficiently. But another matchup to look for is Geno Smith versus the Giants secondary. Geno Smith has played well this season, having a career year. You know, 11 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's not turning it over a lot either. Really remarkable when you look at Geno Smith and where he's came to in his career. Good for him. All praises due to Geno. But the Giants secondary has played well in spots. They're right now under 90% completion rate given up, 74.8 quarterback rating, and under 60% completion rating for the Giants. So that is secondary. So the Giants secondary could play. There's no question about that. But when you're stopping a quarterback, it's more than the secondary. Have to get pressure. We've seen Kayvon Thibodeau every week getting closer and closer. He has 1 sack, which was a big sack. He's getting closer and closer and closer. Best way to stop the pass is apply pressure. And it's going to be difficult. You're not going to have Azeez Ojulari. You're not going to have Zimenez. So it's going to be tough. And a lot of it's going to be on Kayvon Thibodeau. Can he get pressure? He's going to have Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence there. Can they get pressure up the middle? Dexter Lawrence has been phenomenal this year. You can't say enough about him all pro season. But you got to get pressure. Any starting quarterback in the NFL that you leave back there with time, it's going to pick you apart. No question about that. It's going to pick you apart. Whether it's Geno Smith or Tom Brady, if they have enough time, done. If they have, 3-4 seconds back there or more, you're cooked. Doesn't matter what cornerbacks you have out there. So to stop Geno, got to get pressure, force them to think quickly, force their offense to move quickly and adjust quickly. And I think they'll have some success against Geno. That's it for the matchups portion. Now we're going to get into the prediction part of the show. This one's a little hard to predict, only because Seattle's been kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team. It seems like several teams the Giants have faced this year have been Jekyll and Hyde. But this team especially, they've had big wins, high of the highs. They've had difficult losses, low of the lows. They could pass the ball and run the ball, but their defense is not good. So they somehow land right in the middle. Question is, where do the New York Giants land? I almost feel like a lot of people out there, whether it's prognosticators, fans of other teams, they're waiting for that other shoe to fall off when it comes to the Giants, right? This is not real. There's no way they could be this good during a rebuild. When is that shoe going to fall off? When are these losses going to come? Maybe they don't. To me, this Giants team is for real. They have one of the best rushing attacks in football, right? Number 1 or number 2. Browns are right up there with, I believe the Browns are number 1 right now. They have a defense that's opportunistic, that makes plays at the right time. They have a quarterback that's smart, tough, improving every week, playing well within the system. They have a good coach. They have a good GM. They have a structure. They have a core. It seems like they're putting a culture in place. And that's where you get winning football. And the age-old NFL mindset of a rebuild has to take a couple of years. Maybe that's not the case. Because maybe this Giants team shouldn't have been in a rebuild. They've drafted in the top 10 for 9 out of the last 10 years. They spent a ton of money in free agency 2 years ago. Galladay, Adoree, just to name a couple players. They've made the moves to not be in a rebuild here. But when coming into the season, you have Daniel Jones, who's essentially looking like a bust quarterback. You have a number 2 overall pick in Barkley, who could not stay healthy. It's looking like they're going to have a brutal defense. It's looking like the offensive line is going to be patchwork again. But here you are, 7 games into the season. Your running back, the number 2 overall pick, is up for MVP consideration. Your number 6 overall pick quarterback, Daniel Jones, is playing like a renewed player. The best football he's played in his career. Absolutely the cleanest football he's played. You have an offensive line that, even after sustaining 2 more devastating injuries in the first half versus Jacksonville, ran the ball more effectively in the second half. That's fight. That's coaching. And that's a good team. And maybe the Giants don't need to be in a rebuild. Obviously, they need to move smart. They need to make the right moves. They traded Kadarius Toney. Behind the scenes, who knows what went on there. In Joe, you trust if you're a Giants fan. And you move forward. And you hope you can go on the road versus Seattle this week. Tough crowd. Geno Smith playing well. Kenneth Walker, the rookie running back, has been running wild the last couple weeks. A defense that can be had, and that's where the Giants need to step up in this game. That Seattle defense can be had. And if you're the Giants, if you can come out with a win here, you're 7-1 going into the bye week. So my final prediction is New York Giants 27, Seattle Seahawks 20. I think Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones once again proved to be too much for the opposing defense. I think Geno finally starts making a couple mistakes here and there. I think Kayvon Thibodeau has a big game. And all in all, I think the Giants just proved to be a little bit too much on the ground. And, hey, if it's close again, you'll take it. If it's another fourth quarter win, you'll take it. Wins are wins no matter what it is. And this New York Giants team has showed this season they're coming to win. They're tough, resilient, they come from behind, they play their best in the biggest moments. And that's when you know a team has become good. That's it for today's episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. Check out the Giants Country team. Great content come out of there. For everybody that already has, everybody that comments, everybody that engages me on Twitter over the show, everybody that engages. I want to see more comments on these videos too. I want to engage with you guys and gals. But for everybody that has, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This means the world to me. The Giants content creation is something that's come natural, something that I take a lot of pride and enjoyment in, and all the engagement and the support from you guys and gals just helps push it further along. So thank you. Until next time, peace.